Hi, and welcome to my session at SCOM 2026. Oh, it's great. I feel great to be back. It has been already a couple of years that I had the privilege to actually speak at this event. And the session I've prepared for you this time is how to actually choose what you want to monitor and how to create value. So monitor all the things, or maybe don't. This session is based on real life experience. So in the end, I just hope when you attend this session, at the end, you will get something back and try to actually use these tips and tricks in your next monitoring project or project whatsoever. So first, a little bit about myself. My name is Dieter Wijkmans. I'm from Belgium. I think I already speak for 12 years in the SCOM space, Azure space. I'm a management consultant of Obvious, where I spent almost 10 years or even more, I think, helping customers creating monitoring projects or other projects regarding Azure governance or Azure Road to Azure. I've added my email here, which is dwi@obvious.be. If you have questions during or after the session, I'm not that good at hiding online, so you can find me there. You can always shoot me a mail and then we can jump into a call or whatever. I'm not so active anymore on social media, but still a fan of LinkedIn, so you can find me there as well. I also added our Obvious website if you are curious about our services or if you just want to connect, always free to do so. And last but not least, I'm a 12-year MVP now in cloud and data center management. So I've seen a lot of things grow in the space, a lot of things move, but I'm still pretty happy that SCOM is still around. So it's not replaced or whatever. And last but not least, I'm also dual MVP since 2024, in the Azure hybrid and migration space. So let's take you on a journey in, let's say, my experience. I'm not saying that it's the holy grail, but if I can share some of the experience I've seen during SCOM projects or monitoring projects in a broader sense, of course, I'm happy to share those with you. First, a bit of a trigger warning. Trigger warning, you mean? Well, this is basically the quote that got me thinking about doing a session like this. I actually had a customer who called me in a little bit late in the project, and they basically literally said we had like 3,000 alerts a day. And the other thing we monitored successfully was how fast people muted notifications, meaning they had invested so much time in monitoring itself. They did so much. They had so much man hours. They even had an external party in, and they had no value whatsoever. And I mean, it happens all the time. And there are a couple of keywords here, which is very important. The fact that they had 3,000 alerts a day, the value went down, of course. And they had no way of turning it around because I'm not saying that the ship already sailed, but it was just almost too late in the project to actually turn the ship. So we had to remove everything, did an audit, and then did the installation the right time, the right time around. And then the value slowly started growing. But if they uh, stepped back and looked at what they needed to do, normally it should have been better in implementation. So if you hear this, if a customer has 3,000 alerts a day, I will give you tips and tricks to actually mitigate. But sometimes it's even better to just start from scratch to actually have that trust level back at zero. So after this trigger warning, you're still with me. That's awesome. The agenda for today, I always like to cut my sessions in a couple of sections. First of all, what's the problem? I mean, if you have 3,000 alerts a day, either you have a huge environment and there's an issue in your environment, or, and that's the most likely thing, you have an issue with monitoring and you need this resolved. So we'll kind of define the problem. Then afterwards, we're going to ask ourselves, is it really that bad? And then we're going to ask ourselves how we can actually mitigate this. Mitigation is very important. That's when there's still room to actually mitigate or start from scratch. And I will also give you the tips how to do it right the first time around. And of course, the key takeaways afterwards. So what is basically the problem? I have been called into projects when the installation was already done by another partner or was already done by internal staff. They were pretty convinced that they had set up everything correct the right way, but they struggled with monitoring, so they called me for, quote, a couple of days, unquote, to actually do some magic stuff, and then the monitoring would be better. So most of the problems occur from the fact that a customer had an issue, or they are convinced that monitoring suddenly is key. So they want to make sure that they want to have monitoring and they want to have it fast. I had a project where they needed monitoring due to an outage of a website, and they had outages of servers, so they needed monitoring, and somebody knew SCOM, so they just spun up a server, installed SCOM on a SQL, which was already pretty, let's say, awesome, because the SCOM installation projects from time to time is not so easy. And then they started monitoring, meaning dumping all the management packs in, and then going from there. Continue. So in the end, they had the monitoring in, and they, as quick as possible, they needed it as quick as possible. They basically told no one that they had priorities, so they just said, like, something happened, we need the monitoring, and we need the monitoring everything. We need to monitor everything because we will and we want to avoid that something is happening again in our environment. So please monitor everything. And well, the manager actually said to me, it's just monitoring. We will tune it later. We just need something to tell the board that we are now actively monitoring. Well, if you say something like that, you're not actively monitoring. You are just trying to create a sense of safety, which is not monitoring. So what happens in those cases, most of the time, I've seen that a lot. Raise your virtual hands if indeed you've seen them as well. Alert storms, meaning dump a management pack, default overrides, and then suddenly the alerts pour in. In the beginning, the engineer tells you that it's perfectly normal, meaning that the monitoring is working, and you start plowing through the tickets. But of course, you want to evangelize, or you want to promote your work, so you start sending notifications to people. And then the notifications pour in, and people say, I get too many notifications. So in the end, what's happening is the fact that the notifications will just be tucked away in a mailbox. They will be just disintegrated to a small blue-ish number that increases, but nobody would actually look at them. And in the end, the only thing that they will do basically is open the mailbox and just read all and then go on with their lives. So trust in SCOM is on an all-time low, meaning nobody trusts SCOM that when a disaster happens, that it will notify you of the right things. So it's just on its island. And of course, this is also a quote out of the real life. When you point this out to people, I got a response back, we are not the problem, it's just a bad product. I've heard it so many times that SCOM is so complicated that it's a bad product, and it's too complicated to set up. But the thing is, it's a huge toolbox, and you need to look at it as a toolbox, and you need to take out the tools you need. If you want to build a shed, you don't get all the tools, you just pile them on each other, and then just say, okay, well, where's my shit? You need to build it, you need to maintain it, you need to have a plan, you need to start working from scratch, you need your foundation, and then you need to build the shed, and you need to install the roof, not start with the roof and then build the foundation on top of it, because in the end, all the recipe will be there for a monitoring project, but it will never be a monitoring project. So the story, we all know, I've seen it before. And to be honest, my first SCOM installation was pretty much inexperienced the same way. So you just dump the management packs and you say, hey, you know what? The management packs are in, my job is done. Let's just plow through all the alerts, plow through all the management packs, and then start from scratch and seeing what's coming up and then monitoring top down. It's not a good approach, I can tell. Because in fact, in management packs, there are things which are enabled by default or disabled by default. Meaning, if you don't go through the management pack and you disable something which is enabled by default, it's fine. But if you have something which is disabled by default and you are not aware, you are actively not monitoring, and maybe this specific part is really important for your environment. So the management pack guide is key, but more on that later. How you can actually monitor or make sure that those management packs are implemented properly. Why is this happening? The reasons why this is happening, most of the time, is pressure. I mentioned when I come into a project and the project has already been started, somebody needs to pull out this project as soon as possible, and they need to make sure that value is shown, because there is already a lot of money spent on an external party or internally, and they need to, well, increase the value of SCOM. So the pressure is on. They have no priorities, meaning there's no project plan, there's no management pack implementation plan. They just need it, and they need it now, straight away. And they have a tool-driven approach, meaning this is the tool, and we need to make sure that tool is working properly. And we're just gonna go plow through all the tools and make sure that that approach is followed. Key persons not involved. I can't stress this enough. If you want to know what the company really wants to monitor, you need to sit down with the application owner. You need to sit down with the Active Directory admin. You need to sit down with developers. You need to know what's actually in your environment and what is key to actually start monitoring. There's no point in monitoring everything, but you need to make sure that you monitor at least the things that matter the most. And then you need to actually look at the responsibility or the experience of the people who actually know the product better than you. And last but not least, monitoring is low on the priority list. I've seen it before. Monitoring is pretty low on the priority list, so it's very hard to actually get those key persons, free up some time, or even make sure that they give you the info which is needed, because in fact, they basically work on a day-to-day basis to get everything up and running, and to keep everything up and running, instead of just making sure that everything is there. And monitoring is one of the things where you go like, it's just an additional service. It doesn't create any value, but if you get caught and you can avoid something before it even happens, or you know what is wrong in an instant, of course, it will create value. So these are the key 5 things, in my personal opinion, why this happens. Money is also, or budget is also a driven factor, but that's in the pressure one. So in the end, if I had customers where they actually said to me, okay, you're way too expensive. And then afterwards they had to call me because the guy who was less expensive didn't do a great job. So I had to come in. But my budget was cut because they already spent a lot of time and budget on the other guy, of course. So it's very tough discussions at that point. So what do I see as an alert storm? I've seen SCOM installations where they called me in and they had more than 1,000 alerts on probably 20 servers or something. So it was huge and a lot of duplicate alerts. So they had like, of those thousands, maybe there were 200 or 300 significant alerts that were just repeating alerts because the repeat count wasn't installed or whatever. They had a lot of noise, meaning that a lot of things were just yelling in between. So it was no way of seeing what actually was the good monitoring or the good, let's say, the good approach. And they were constantly firefighting. If you, and guilty as charged, if you just dump the management packs in and then start plowing through the alerts which are coming out, most of the time you will actually have an issue because you will disable alerts, but you will always have the same amount of alerts or almost the same amount of alerts a day. Plus, if you configure it that way, there's no way that all the alerts which are active in an environment will happen once. So you can actually look at them. You need to get into the management pack guide and you need to get in to see what kind of rules and tips and tricks are in there. Most of the time I do it with a script that I just dump all the overrules and alerts and monitors, rules and monitors out, and I just give them to the key stakeholders and tell them, do you have an hour or maybe 2 hours at a workshop-like meeting just to go over these and say what's significant for you? Make the override management pack, and then I create that management override pack as a project. So what's the main reaction I see at that point when the value of SCOM is really low? People are ignoring alerts. Remember just dumping them into a side folder in their mailbox. The admins react with disabling notifications. And if you disable a notification, well, you will basically tell SCOM, keep yelling, but keep yelling in your own white, dark room, and leave me alone. Well, then you're effectively not monitoring, you're just, plowing through the noise. And of course, people lose trust if they see a mail coming from SCOM saying, hey, something is wrong, within the hundreds of mails they get every day. Perhaps that one mail is very important, but they will just not treat it as important or will not see it. Because in fact, the issue is that they will think that it's yet again a noisy or a spam mail. So let's define the core problem here. The core problem is quite simple. It's monitoring what's possible, so what's in the management packs, versus what is actually valuable. Meaning, if you monitor what's possible, you just want to monitor as much as possible. You are basically telling everyone, I can monitor everything and everything is possible, instead of monitoring what's valuable. One of my, let's say, main examples I always give here is the fact that if you monitor every small little detail thing of a server, it's basically telling you a lot of details. But if you just focus on what's valuable, meaning if you always tell people, yeah, the CPU is above 80%, CPU is above 80%, above 80%, and at one point they're sick with it, then they tell you, yeah, let's move it to 95 or just disable it. Well, the next time that there will be a faulty process or whatever, and the server is locked on 100%, you will not get an alert because they basically told everyone, well, let's disable this because it doesn't have any value. And last but not least, SCOM is not set it and forget it. It's a process. It needs to be constantly looked after. It needs to be nourished. It needs to be changed. It's the same thing as with all policies and all different processes in a company. Someone needs to actually, not saying a full-time dedicated, but someone needs to take responsibility and ownership of SCOM. Otherwise, the tool will just sit there, and I'm not saying die, but it will just lose value over time because the environment in a company is also changing rapidly from time to time. So it's very important that you change the monitoring with the people or with, let's say, the other things which are happening in a company to make sure that it still stays relevant. So now that we have defined the problem, I always get, or sometimes I get the question, well, we already set it up. Is it really this bad? I mean, monitoring is not really something that as something someone told me that I should start monitoring, but is it really that bad? Can't we just flip some switches or just try to change some things and be done with it? And this is always my response. Whoa. So let's take a step back. And that's what I always tell people. And this is one of my favorite quotes in those kind of scenarios. But if a tree falls in a forest and no one is around to hear it, does it make a sound? Probably it will, but nobody actually will hear it. So in the end, if you install SCOM and you make then your tree or SCOM is the forest and something tumbles in the forest and SCOM starts screaming. In the end, if you have no notifications because you already tuned them down due to the noise, and if you have no one actually mailed or looking at the mails, SCOM is screaming in the forest or is letting the tree fall in the forest, but there's nobody actually to hear it. I had discussions with post outages where they said, yeah, well, you installed SCOM and we weren't notified. And then I dig into the SCOM environment and I see that someone actually disabled all the notifications, or the mails were there, but they were just not treated because they were part of the further enlarging number of unread mails in the notification box. So in the end, SCOM did its job, but nobody was actually looking at it because it wasn't having any value. So that's really a problem that we need to tackle. So let's go from unhappy SCOM admin to happy SCOM admin. And this is me face planting because a lot of things I'm going to show you here I recognize a lot. And please, for once, take a look at these. And if you recognize one of these different things I'm going to show you, make sure that you stop, reflect, and try to steer the project in another direction. First of all, don't rush things. If there is time pressure, if there is budget pressure, make sure that you, within that time or within that budget, make sure that you have at least the base or one management pack completely configured, and leave maybe the project with the fact that they have a notion of how to actually create or manage the overrides for the next management packs. So don't rush things and trying to get it solved or trying to get it installed within a certain time frame, because it will bite you in the end. I can fully tell you it will bite you in the end. Don't install the platform and dump all the management packs in. If at one point the customer wants to do something themselves, maybe to avoid costs or different time frames or whatever, I always do a project breakdown, and there's always a couple of days for installation, and then a couple of days for base management packs, core services, and custom. More on that later. If the customer wants to install, cut a corner and install the infrastructure itself, it's fine. As long as you tell them if the infrastructure is installed, I will do a health check to make sure that everything is up to par. Remember the SQL correlation, which is now solved, fortunately. But emphasize that they don't dump all the management packs in. Let them make a list or make a list together and start working through that list one at a time to avoid those noisy notifications. If you see people, whenever you come in and they are firefighting instead of controlling the environment, they will never win or they will never tame the beast that SCOM is. If you start with firefighting and you start with plowing through all the tickets and then go, your only objective is to lower the amount of tickets or lower the amount of alerts, you will constantly get stuck in that firefighting cycle. This is an important one. If you don't know the end goal, you will never be able to look at where you want or what you want to achieve with SCOM. When I go into a project, I always tell them, what do you want to really monitor? What is basically your end goal? Do you want to have a 360 monitoring tool that has everything in there, network, Azure, whatever? Or do you want to just monitor one website and go from there? It's very important to know what they actually want to achieve. If you don't know the environment, or you're working with people who don't know the environment, they are new to the environment, or they just got assigned to monitoring, like my start, someone just walked into the office and said, hey, you work with Microsoft products, right? I said, yes, well, you're now the monitoring specialist here in SCOM, start working with it. If you don't know the environment and you don't know SCOM, make sure that you surround yourself with people who know and that you have stakeholders who actually will tell you what is best to monitor and how to approach. That's the first. That's the second thing. Don't go on an island. Try to actually get meetings in with the stakeholders with that list of overrides. Ask them what's important for them. Sometimes you will get the answer, I want to monitor everything. Then you know that it's the wrong approach, and then you have to, I'm not saying force them, but at least go into discussion and say, okay, I have a couple of questions afterwards, which you can ask to actually make them think about what they want to monitor. Dimension the environment properly. It's with the next step. It's the same with the next step. All the work you do in SCOM is, well, the management packs and the backups and all the rest very important. And if you want to make sure that SCOM is working, you need to have enough SQL power. You need to have a couple of management services. So you need to properly dimension the environment. And last but not least, take those backups. All the hard work is in your, not in your servers, but in your override management packs. Export those override management packs and make sure that you go from there. And of course, expectation management, that's the same thing as your end goal. Make sure that everyone knows what to expect from SCOM and that it will go worse in the beginning. It's the happiness curve. First, you need to go down the curve, and then you need to turn the curve around and make sure that you have the trust and knowledge to actually go from there. So this is always what I propose when I create a new monitoring project. That is, I always ask the question, not can we monitor it, because we probably can. There are a lot of management packs, custom management packs. You can even write your own things for custom installed applications and whatever. But you need to ask yourself the question, not can we monitor it, but should we monitor it? There are key things, and management packs are created as generic as possible for everyone. But you need to make sure that this, the company, your company specific configuration is in there. I'm just pausing here on this slide because this is very important. This is the question you need to ask yourself. This is the question you need to ask the engineers. This is the question you need to ask your customers. Should we monitor it? The value of monitoring, if you get that question, what's the value of monitoring? Of course, avoiding user impact, avoiding revenue impact, and protecting your critical services. Will monitor fail? Eventually, there will be things not seen or missed due to notifications or not good configuration. But that's where you can shine and always make sure that if you miss something, it will not be missed the next time. Go into discussion, make sure that those things are there, and then you will avoid user impact and avoid reader revenue impact, and you will get the value of monitoring and SCOM up in the company. Well, last but not least, I talk from experience. The reality sometimes is not as happy as can be. You have management packs. You're dealing with a lot of management packs. You have override chaos. You have default alerts that you need to go through. You have no valuable alerts. You have no insights, and you're fighting the constant stream of alerts. So make sure that you're not coming into this reality, and let's start with mitigating this situation. So the mitigation is quite simple. I defined here the noise funnel, meaning it happened when I got into a customer and they just said, yeah, well, we want to have a SCOM upgrade because in fact, we have too many alerts. At that point, there are like bells and whistles going off in my head. So I go like, okay, but why do you want to upgrade when your SCOM environment is already, well, in a bad shape? Yeah, because that's going to solve everything. No, it's not going to solve everything. So I always propose in the noise funnel, how did they get there in the low value SCOM is a bad product to, well, they enabled everything by default. They get tons of insignificant alerts. The noise, the frustrations go up, and then SCOM is completely ignored. I have seen SCOM admins who just gave up because, well, they were just constantly fighting those alerts. So make sure that you do it the right time, or do it right. This is my approach when you are already in an environment you're down in the trenches. The alerts are flying left and right, and you need to make sure that you create value as soon as possible. So the management packs are already in. You disable all notifications. Do this first, because then the noise stops to the outside world. You double check the management packs one by one. You check with the stakeholders. You tune the thresholds. You scope correctly, and then you enable the alerts, notifications. Disable notifications first. Nobody will actually, if someone jumps up and say, hey, I'm not seeing anything from SCOM anymore, those are the people you need to go in discussion with, because those are the people who basically look into the alerts and see what's going on in SCOM. So first thing first, alert reduction. Get those alerts down. The confidence level will go up when alerts are significant and meaningful, and enable notifications to the teams late in the process to avoid starting already with confidence below zero. And last but not least, after the alert reduction, you can truly activate SCOM as the entry of your ETL process. Small top tip, always check the default view, because I had a customer where they trimmed the default view to not see specific alerts. So I had like 10, 15 alerts. I was down to 10, 15 alerts. So I activated the ITIL integration, and then suddenly they called me that they had like 1,000 tickets because all the things in the active view were actually sent over, but were not seen in the console. So make sure that you check that as well. Another cool thing, reactive versus proactive. I always love that I can proactively monitor, but in the beginning, you need to start with reactive. Reactive monitoring means that the issue is already there, and you just notify someone that it happened. You're at least always a step behind, and you have no increase in trust nor value for the customer or SCOM. Proactive monitoring, you basically see things coming and react before impact. You have the possibility of false positives, but you increase uptime of the systems and the core services. What if I told you This is a top tip I mentioned before. Do not integrate SCOM with any help desk ticketing tool before cleaning out the noise. Otherwise, you will have a field day explaining to everyone the thousands of tickets. I've been there. Always make sure that the notifications are lost in the things you're doing. So let's see how we can actually do it right the first way. This is always a question I ask them. What do you want to monitor? The reaction is everything. And then I say, what do you want to be called for at 3 a.m.? And then they say, nothing. Well, the truth is somewhere in between. So let's see how we can actually solve this. The roadmap is quite easy. You define value. You start small, like I mentioned, one management pack at a time. And you treat tuning the management packs as a project. Tune, iterate, revalue. This is the roadmap which I'm always sticking to, regardless of the installation or whatever. And then I define or divide the management packs in different, let's say, categories. First, you have base. Those are the monitoring management packs for the basic availability of your server environment, meaning your core, Windows core, hardware manufacturer, management pack, network management pack. Take your time for this. Take your time for the base, because this is your foundation for your shed, remember? Then add the services. The services are business services. Those are sealed management packs supplied by vendors or Microsoft. DNS, DHCP, AD, Hyper-V, whatever is in your environment. Make sure that you add the services on your base. And then last but not least, go into the custom ones. Make sure that you divide the management packs in these three categories to avoid that you're already firefighting a custom and then a service or base or whatever. So if you look at the process, the custom is the most work, but you already have the value of base and you already have the value of services. So it's easier to go into discussion or into, let's say, different things with the business owners saying, okay, now I've proven that SCOM is the right monitoring tool. Let's tackle those custom management packs. This is my right approach. You can have another right approach, but I always make a list of management packs within those three categories. So base, services, custom. I read the management pack guide, I implement the management pack, and I get the stakeholders involved for the specific management pack. Implement the first set of overrides. Remember, with that list, you export from the management pack. There are PowerShell scripts available for that. If you want a PowerShell script, just send me a mail. I will provide you a PowerShell script, or you can vibe code a PowerShell script. Evaluate after a week and then adapt. This is something that you basically need to do the entire time. Monitoring is trust. No trust, no value. I use the word trust a lot, but people need to trust the process or need to trust SCOM before they can actually have anything inside. It's an unpopular opinion, but it's a team sport. Monitoring is, you need to do with the entire team. You have, let's say, the experience, which could potentially be good for monitoring, but still you need to do it yourself. Don't need to do it yourself. Don't let deadlines rush you. If there is a deadline and you have the feeling that you can't deliver the quality, it will bite you in the end. So don't let deadlines rush you. And if no one trusts the process, there is no progress. It's a bit of a thing, but that's really key. So in the end, I always love to stop with key takeaways. So my final thoughts is show the true value. If you create value in monitoring, and if you create value in what you select and what you want to monitor, people will appreciate SCOM more. So stick to the plan. Don't dump those management packs without proper knowledge. Get stakeholders in. There's always room for mitigation, but do it right the first time around. Sometimes it's better to say to a customer, we're going to start from scratch, than dumping in and building on a wrong foundation. And if you do it right, you go from reactive to proactive monitoring. I've seen companies completely turn around their monitoring strategy because they are going on proactive monitoring, and proactive monitoring increases the ability to actually mitigate or solve the problem before there's user or revenue impact. So we're hitting the 40-minute marker. Thank you so much for watching this session. I hope you learned some valuable keys, tips, and tricks. If you want to discuss afterwards, again, scroll back to the first slide or send me a mail on dwi@obvus.be. And I wish you all an awesome SCOMathon 2026. Thank you, and bye for now.